Hunt Patch 2.3 is looking pretty good. The event itself is pretty simple. Mostly there's a special supply point which is marked by this green spot on the map. There'll be various sealed goodies there that you can spend your event points on. In addition, certain trait spurs are going to show up that you can unlock with 3 different event traits: Gunrunner, Corpseer, and Blademancers. These all return from other events. I'm not going to talk anymore about the event stuff because I want to get into the real changes. So let's talk about some of the additions and changes to balances and arsenals that are coming with the new patch. Equipment changes. Fused explosives now behave a little bit differently. Whenever they touch fire, they immediately explode. This includes a hunter or a monster who's burning, flares and fusees as well. So if you have your explosive out and you throw a flare or fusee right on it, it'll instantly explode. This works well with fusees because you can throw your fusee and throw something of the same way, like a regular stick of dynamite, and they're going to land in the exact same spot. So even if you're blind to where you're throwing them, you can ensure an instant explosion with that dynamite. Throwing knives, axes, and spears have all been adjusted to give them a little bit more individual identity. Throwing knives are going to be weaker against tougher enemies, and if you're trying to take out a horse or a cow, you're going to need to hit the head to do it without setting the animal off. My beloved throwing axes are stronger now against immolators and armoreds, and in addition, they've increased the amount of axes you bring from 2 up to 3. Frankly, axes were always my favorite to bring, even when they were the worst of the throwing tools, so I'm glad to see them get love. Then, the throwing spear has been made even stronger against larger enemies like armoreds or meatheads. Alright, quick update on throwing tools. With the throwing knife, it's going to kill to the upper chest. To the lower torso, it'll kill on a pole. For the throwing axe, it will kill on the lower torso, and it will not kill to the arm, even with a throw and a pull. Then, the throwing spear will kill to the arm, or with a throw and a pull to the leg. The unstick damage has all been updated. It's been increased from 14 up to 24. While the damage has been increased against players, if you're up against a boss, it has been reduced. So it's going to be hard to count on these tools to reliably take out bosses. Melee tools get a nice buff, with the bosses losing their reduction of damage against them. As well, the world weapon spawns have now been increased around boss lairs. You can now disarm and pick up dark dynamite satchels, so if you think it's worth the risk and you're not going to get exploded in the process, you can pick it up and use it for your own devices. In addition, trap damage has been adjusted. Most importantly, the concertina and trip mine combo is now lethal again. If you're unaware, if you placed these 2 traps over top each other, then when another hunter trips them both, there's enough damage that happens between the bleed and the poison that the hunter is going to die before they can escape it. This was removed in the last year, and it's fun to see it come back in. Bear trap impact damage has gone from 82 down to 54. The important thing that means, if someone wants a kill trap with bear traps, they got to use all 3 of them. Regen shots across the board have been nerfed. The large shots have gone from 10 minutes down to 7 minutes, and the small shots from 5 minutes down to 4 minutes. I can't get on multiplayer on this account, but a cool thing that they added is a prompt that shows you when you're in range of a teammate who can benefit from one of your equipped shots. Then we have what I think is my favorite change of this entire patch. When you buy a hunter now, it's going to come with 10 trait points and no randomly rolled traits. So that way you have a consistent 10 points to go in and choose the traits you want for that hunter. I think this is going to help make it so that fresh hunters don't come in with as many top tier traits, because I believe the overall point distribution is lower and you're not going to get crazy rolls where someone has something like both fanning and doctor. Alright, buckle up, here comes a lot of trait changes, and I think most of these you guys are going to like. Lightfoot no longer has a special feature for solos. It used to give them silent movement while crouched. That has been removed. Likewise, the other movement trait no longer gives its additional ability for an increased movement speed while crouched. Fast Fingers now supports the Maynard and the Martini Henry lines. Here's a big one. The Bomb Launcher and Bomb Lance have been added to Bolt Thrower, now reducing those reload times. Conduit got a buff for solos. Now when solos use it, they get the full effects of 2 clues whenever they gather a clue. This way, you're going to get an additional chunk of stamina from it rather than just the map progress. Blast Sense has received a buff to now see blasts from silenced weapons. I think this tooltip hasn't been updated yet, but this will help deal with some of those oppressive silenced players. If you want to learn more about silencers, stay tuned to this channel because I'm working on a breakdown of both silencers and subsonic ammo. That should include everything you need to know about either of those items. Any trait that uses Darksight for an interaction has been buffed. Serpent went from 10 seconds to 8 seconds, Remedy also from 10 to 8, Poltergeist from 1.5 to 1, I lied, Shadow Leap was actually a nerf, that's from 3 up to 4 seconds. Then, not a trait, Dark Dynamite satchels now have an activation time from 2 seconds down to 1 second. Drop traits are now going to float on water, so if you kill a meathead or a boss in the water, they're going to float. Arsenal updates. There have been some additions, let's check them out. Starting out with the Carbine. The Carbine gets a silencer variant now. This is going to come with basic ammo, FMJ ammo, and subsonic ammo. With the Carbine silencer getting the subsonic ammo that will also be available to the other variant. On the topic of silencers, it's important to note that all silencers are now getting a 10% reduction in damage. That means the damage for this is only at 130 as opposed to the 145. The Mosin gets 2 new variants. The first is going to be the Mosin Obraz Match and the Mosin Obraz Sharp Eye. Now, if we look at the stats for these, we're going to see a few things. It's got a reduced damage, it has much better spread, a little bit better sway, and a little bit worse velocity. Click over to the Sharp Eye, we just see that that's the Obraz Match with probably what's a Deadeye scope on it. And the only stat we see changing on there is the spread. The sights on the two are a little bit different. Here's the base Mosin and its sights. And now we'll do a comparison. There's the Obraz Match. As mentioned earlier when I talked about the Carbine, silencers are getting a 10% damage nerf across the board. Some important things to keep in mind with this is that certain guns like the Krag or the Vetterli in their silenced variants are no longer going to be above that 125 threshold, which is a guaranteed down to someone who's missing a small bar. While the Vetterli and the Krag feel this the most, it's still going to be felt by other weapons. Not only do the silencers have the penalty of that negative 10% damage, but they also have a shorter range where damage drop-off begins. These two effects are going to compound so that using silencers at any range past that damage drop-off, you're going to feel a significant loss in effectiveness. Many of you will be glad to hear that the revive bolts for the hand crossbow have been removed from the game. If they were in your inventory, they have been removed from your inventory and you have been refunded any purchase price associated with those. The regular crossbow got some minor changes for its shot bolt. Specifically regarding penetration, it was brought down a bit so that it would no longer go through very thick trees. And when it does have penetration, the spread from the shotgun pellets have been slightly reduced. The Officer Carbine Deadeye had its recoil removed. The draw times for pistols are now more consistent. Specifically with the New Army and Scotfield pistols, the draw time is now in line with other pistols. The Berthier has its damage increased to 133 and its recoil reduced to 12. The Mosin Obraz's damage went from 133 down to 126, and its muzzle velocity from 550 all the way down to 520. The Centennial received a slight nerf. When you have Iron Eye and you're aiming down sights, the cycle time has increased from 1.3 seconds to 1.4 seconds. In the inverse, the Vetterli has received some buffs. Its regular cycle time has gone from 1.8 seconds down to 1.7 seconds. And when you have Iron Eye, the aim down sights cycle time has gone from 1.4 to 1.3 seconds. In addition, the Vetterli Cyclone's recoil has been slightly increased, making the Cyclone a little less reliable. Frankly, over the last couple years, the Vetterli has been outclassed by the Centennial consistently, so it feels pretty good to see the Vetterli get a little bit of love. The Choku Nu has an increased muzzle velocity with basic and incendiary ammo from 100 meters per second up to 125 meters per second. In addition, the extra ammo it carries from explosive bolts has gone from 10 down to 5, so you're going to get less explosive bolts now. And the Krag got nerfed, with the extra ammo going from having 12 extra ammo down to 10. The animations for the Spectre was improved to go along with the increased cycle time that it was given in the previous patch. The animation for melee attacks have been improved across the board, so now it should be more consistent that the visuals line up where you're actually hitting with your melee attacks. This applies for both the lowered and the centered crosshaired variants. If you've been following the hit validation and trade window saga, there's now a reduced systemic delay of shot and damage messages between the client and server. Frankly, I'm not smart enough to fully understand what that one means, but I do understand that they also changed the hit validation window. It was 800 milliseconds and now it's down to 450 milliseconds. So it's a little more strict on what hits they're going to validate. There were updates to the drop range stat across the board. There was no actual mechanical change, they just made some updates to make the on-screen stats feel more accurate to what the truth was. Alright, there have been some updates to Scarce Ammo. First off, the Maynard Sniper, thankfully, has its Dum-Dum ammo removed into Scarce Ammo. The Crown and King Auto 5 lost its slugs. Then, as before, the Dolce's FMJ and Dum-Dum are still scarce. The Centennial with its Dum-Dum is scarce, and then the Officer with its Dum-Dum is still scarce. But a couple Dum-Dums did come back into rotation. Both the Cadwell Conversion Pistol and the Scotfield have Dum-Dum returned to them, and they no longer have it scarce. For Bounty Clash, the number of teams that can participate has been reduced from 5 down to 4. In addition, 2 new compounds have been added in Arden Parish and Darrow Livestock, while, in contrast, nighttime has been removed from the time of day pool. In addition, some item placements and extraction points have been changed on a handful of maps. Another great change they're doing is randomizing the week of weekly challenges that unlocks per player. So basically that means the entire player base isn't going to be doing the same set of challenges each week. We've got some wild target changes. First of all, wild targets now have a 100% spawn rate in maps where there's a single boss contract and no sealed horde. In addition, Rotchog gets some adjustments. First of all, she's only going to drop 1 bounty token. Then she's not going to have a banish period. Her corpse is going to remain like the Hellborn does. In addition, Rotchog is going to be dropping 1 scarce trait on death. So you have Hellborn for the burn traits and Rotjaw for the scarce traits. I really like these changes, and frankly that's kind of what I expected when they first brought Hellborn out, is that they would have Rotjaw be the opposite of him in those regards. Then finally, the last bit of information worth knowing is that there's a guaranteed custom ammo box at arsenals and at watchtowers. It's a minor change, but if you like hunting for that scarce ammo type, it's now going to be a little more reliable to find. Keep in mind that if you don't have the new weapons unlocked in the battle pass, you can still check them out in the shooting range. Come into the shooting range and run this way. The majority of them are going to be right here in this area. Sometimes they're missing 1 or 2 weapons, but it looks like they're all here this time, because I believe it's just the 2 Mosins and the Carbine Silencer. Anyways, I'm ASCool with Hunt Lab. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this new event.